Hello and welcome back to the Aussie Football Passport. And it is a bit of a somber one to bring you. There's very much a somber mood amongst us. And I'm joined, as always, by Scott and Adam from the Brisbane Football Review. Scott, how are you?
I'm all right, Alex. Somber does very much sum it up, though.
It does, doesn't it? It's, yeah. Look, in Adam's wise words, we actually delayed recording this by 24 hours to let the emotion somewhat dissipate from, I think, the collective feeling of the three of us. So, Adam, I'm sure that that's probably has the emotion waned a little bit for you.
Yeah, look, to be honest, it probably, for me personally, it probably goes the other way. Actually, I tend to, with a bit more thought, I get a little bit angry
Okay.
about things when I think about. But no, look, in all seriousness, I think again, there's a lot to take away, both good and bad and ugly about this. I think it's always good to like I said, it was a very emotional time. The hours following the loss. But look, I don't think it's always a bad thing. I think as Australian football fans, I think that the fact that we are taking it not very well, it's probably bodes well about where our feelings are towards the national team.
Yeah, you're probably right there, Adam. And I guess before we dive further into that, I'll get you to plug the Brisbane Football Review.
Yep. You can find us on Facebook at the Raw Review or Brisbane Football Review, on Twix at BNE Football, Threads, Instagram on Brisbane Football Review. Drop us an email, Brisbane Football Review at gmail.com, and you can find us on all good podcast platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adam. And of course, we are talking about the cruelest of losses in Socceroos history. For once, a penalty shootout goes against us. We lose to Egypt 4-2 on penalties after 1-1 in the 90 minutes and extra time. It's a very cruel way to go out. But one of the biggest shocks I thought was the fact that Tony Popovic actually named an unchanged lineup. Don't you reckon, Scott? I mean, he hasn't done that all tournament.
Well, he hasn't done it in his entire tenure, has he? He's always been bringing in players. He's played 70 odd players up until this point. So to actually go with an unchanged 11 was certainly an interesting one. Not the 11 that I would have thought he would have gone with. I thought he would have gone back to maybe an Ocon in midfield and a Toure up front, but he went for the same starting lineup. I was a bit surprised by that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it caught us all off guard because, Tony Popovic is certainly, I was going to say turned into, but that's not true. He is the ultimate Tinkerman. I think, forget Claudio Ranieri, it's Tony Popovic that's taken that title. Now, I wanted to firstly make a point that the goal that we scored, well, even before that, Egypt scored off a set piece, and you know I find it very fascinating that then we finally get a good delivery on a set piece, even though it was an own goal. And, two goals from set pieces, very, very interesting for a coach that has been talked about ad nauseum for, having the highest level of attention to detail. Set pieces, I think, is something we've not taken any advantage of. And in fact, we defend them really sloppily. I don't know if you agree with my thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, look, it is a bit of a surprise. I think more so the point that the lack of use or lack of success of them, as you said, finally got one to stick. And yes, there was an own goal, but look, it would have, if it didn't come off Jimenez's head, it would have been off Harry Souttar's. So each their own there. But yeah, I think with the sizable height advantage, like given the fact that I think the first dead giveaway that at least against Egypt, that basically that 10 of the starting 11 players were taller than the tallest Egyptian player. Says that that the air battle in set pieces should have been all Socceroos that they didn't utilize enough. And yeah, to me, it just seems like their delivery just wasn't there. I'm not sure if that was something that it just never came off. I know there's a number of proponents of the dead ball in the Socceroos team, but it is one area that was very, very surprising given the relative height, especially the three centre backs in Souttar, Chikati, and Harrington. I think most coaches around the world would love to have a back three of that height and also relative skill as well. I would have done more with that.
can you imagine how lustfully Mikel Arteta would have looked at that back three with his set pieces? Seriously, but yes, and to mention the fact that set pieces are back in vogue, of course, because of the Premier League, and we've seen all the wrestling and such, even in this World Cup. So yeah, it's rankles with me. It's strange, but anyway, we won't get too bogged down in that. What we will discuss is I thought Hassan come on for Egypt and caused us a lot of problems. His dribbling ability and the fact that he was willing to take people one on one really did some damage, and you could see that sort of later on in the game as Egypt really worked their way into it. But unfortunately, we have to talk about Jordan Boss with that injury at half time there. Whispers that he might have done his ACL. That would be really unfortunate, wouldn't it, Scott, considering that he'd put himself right in the shop window with the performances, particularly against Paraguay at that unfamiliar right wing back role.
So just quickly on High Sam, I think it dovetails into something else to talk about later on as well, so we'll come back to that point. But on Geordie Bosch, you're right, it's a cruel way for his tournament to end. He was one of Australia's absolute standout players, and it sounded like he was very much gaining the attention of a number of big clubs in England and elsewhere as well. So a big move could have been on the offing. And look, hopefully it's not the dreaded ACL, but when players limp off and then they go and they come back on the sideline with crutches, it's never a good sign. So it's certainly an injury of some significance for him. And look, I the challenge. The guy got the ball. You have to say that's the first thing. He did get the ball, and then he went straight through the plant leg of Jordan Boss, and unfortunately, that's where the contact has come from. What I find really frustrating about it is, I know the referee gave advantage in Australia. Did get some advantage going into that, after that through to the halftime break, but there was no booking for that. Didn't go back and give him a yellow card for that. And I think actually, I don't want to go in on the referee because it's sour grape stuff to just blame the referee. But I think in that moment, a yellow card, and even one of the earlier challenges on Iran Kunda, a yellow card, just to say we're not going to allow these type of challenges to creep into the game would have been a good way to go about it. But look, hopefully Jordan Boss is okay because he makes a big difference to this side. And you could actually see in that second half when Kai Truman went out there, he tried to get forward and tried to do what he can, but he's just not the attacking threat Geordie Boss is. So when he wasn't there, it was a big miss for us.
Yeah, it was, right, arguably our most important attacking outlet, and you could see that our attack dropped off. I mean, there wasn't much attack there to begin with, let's be honest, but that's a discussion point for a whole lot later. But yeah, the loss of Jordan Boss really took away our key outball and ability to take on those Egyptian defenders one on one. Speaking of Egypt, Mo Salah, he played on one leg until the 89th minute, and he somehow turned up and started peppering Matt. I was about to say Matt Ryan, but Patrick Beach with shots there. So that was quite interesting, and he stepped up later for a penalty. But let's talk the substitutions, perhaps. And I know, Scott, you want to discuss the substitute in the 70th minute.
Yeah, so I think that's where this game completely started to really change. Isn't it? You look at the first 17 minutes, they basically played to a dead heat, Australia and Egypt. They got a goal from a set piece that we weren't happy to concede. We got one from a set piece they weren't happy to concede. We had chances, they had chances. It was very even game, and I can't fathom the change that Tony Popovich made on the 70th minute. I just don't understand the logic behind it. There were two players in our side who were clearly troubling the Egyptian side and having them worried. It was Christian Volpato on the right-hand side, cutting in onto his left foot. That was something they were really worried about clearly. And anytime the ball got within 5 yards of Iran Kunda, they'd just absolutely kick him. So clearly they were the two players they were worried about. And he took both off at the same time in a game which was in the balance. And it comes back to what a lot of people have picked up on in the last 24 hours post game. It was the risk averse nature of things. We're going to play not to lose. We're not going to go and try and win the game. We're going to play not to lose the game. And that's where I think this game completely flipped on its head. We brought on Mo Turo, who we all wanted to see, but we wanted to see that trio of Volpato, Iran Kunda, and Toure. And we said you probably can't start it, but I don't think anyone said you can't finish with that, or at least give it a period of time out there. So that was really disappointing. I would have liked to have seen either take off Metcalf, who had a good game in his own right, but take him off and try that front three I'll be really bold and put Metcalf in a more midfield role and just say, let's go for it. We've got ascendancy here after we equalised. We had the chance to really go for it. We never took that opportunity. And that's the real what if of this game for me is if we had have gone for it, what would have happened? It's not a guarantee we would have won the game, but it's a chance we never took. And you mentioned the sub for Egypt, Hassan coming on down the right hand side, Trezeguet later on. That was clearly the trigger for Mo Salah to stop limping around on one leg to start playing some real football. And after that, we really only had one or two chances in the opposite end of the field. It was basically Egypt camped in our half, pushing us back, us playing the underdog, looking to get to penalties, which we got to. But I just wonder, if we'd gone for it in that moment and said, let's just try it, what would have happened? And that's what I keep coming back to in the last 24 hours of I wanted to see us go for it. I think everyone wanted to see us go for it. And he did. He just unfortunately went the other way.
Yeah, I can't just, I completely agree with you. In fact, Scott, with what you just said, and you know, Tony Popovich played Nestor Irankunda as an out and out number 9, and he's not that. And we saw that. We saw plenty of evidence of that in all 3 games since the Turkey game that he was played in that role. I don't know how much more evidence Tony Popovich needed to see to move him to the left to his best
Look at the
position,
first
even
game.
to the right. Yeah,
It worked in the first game.
exactly. He scored a goal off it. Like I'm still astounded by that. And he picked Tete Yengi and Mo Toure as out and out number 9. So why do we keep going back to Nestor?
Yeah.
It really it still frustrates me, if you can't tell by the sound of my voice, with that one. But there was also another very interesting or interesting substitution. Let's not call it controversial, but I know this is one you want to talk about, Adam. The goalkeeper substitution. When it comes off, you look like a genius. When it doesn't, you look like a bit of a fool. And that's exactly probably what Tony Popovich kind of looks like with this one, don't you think, Adam?
Yeah, look, this is one that's I think got me and probably the entire football nation here in Australia, at least questioning. Look, it worked once ago, once for Socceroos before in that Intercontinental playoff in 22. We've seen other coaches around the world use this where taking the starting goalkeeper off, going with a quote specialist penalties take goalkeeper. This one is just it absolutely all the evidence pattern to why did he go with Matt Ryan? Like for one thing, Patrick Beach was having an excellent game. He basically saved the game for the Socceroos to even get to that point after he thwarted but Rami Rabia's header right in stoppage time. So you could say that the lad was right in confidence on that. Furthermore, I'd even think, well, if that's what you want to do, given that it was, and to take a little bit of a history lesson from in Qatar in 2022 in the playoff, it was Matt Ryan who came off to make way for Andrew Redmayne. What possible evidence you say that Matt Ryan would have been the one to be the goalkeeper to do that? If anything, you would have gone with Paul Izzo, who has history as far as saving penalties. It's in those situations. I just don't understand it. I like I said, that I think this is, and I think again, this is. I may be sort of jumping sort of backwards and forwards to overall thoughts on that, but I just think that they, and I'll say, even though the Tony Popovich may have gotten advice from his coaching staff, his absolute army of coaching staff, they've overcomplicated. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's simple games. It's simple games sometimes, and to overcomplicate by trying to strategize and all that. I just think this is, like I said, I get it. He gambled. He went all in, but he lost. And want him or someone to acknowledge that they got it completely wrong. That's I like it, because for me, once it goes to penalties, you don't assign blame. You don't say it's a 50-50. Everyone in world football's got half a brain, knows that. But you can control things. And that substitution in the 118th minute did probably change the course of destiny as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he played for the penalty shootout, Alex. He took off, as we said, those two players earlier I mentioned. Also took off an Aidan O'Neill as well, a player who you would think would have the technical skill to step up and take a penalty. But on the goalkeeper thing, I wonder if it was the case of, remember the A-League 6 weeks ago, Auckland and Melbourne City played in the first week of the finals, and Patrick Beach was in goal in that game, and Auckland won 7-6 in the penalty shootout, and he didn't make a single save. So I wonder if that was on Tony Popovich's mind very recently, saying, look, he's just been involved in a penalty shootout. He didn't make any saves. Maybe it's not for him in that moment. But I agree with Adam. Matt Ryan has never been a penalty saving goalkeeper. You think back to the A-League in 2011. He couldn't stop any of the
Yeah.
Royals penalties in that
Mm.
game. 4 years ago, Adam
Yeah.
mentioned it. Graham Arnold said, no, he's not. Oh, John Crawley actually said, we give Graham Arnold the credit. It was actually John Crawley said, no. Andrew Redmayne is the penalty saver. That's the guy we need in there. And Graham Arnold made the save, made the change, and he looks like the genius. But Tony Popovich went to Matt Ryan, and Alex, we know that Egypt were watching on the vision before the penalty shootout. They were watching a penalty that Mbappe took at the Bernabeu this year, where
Yep.
Matt Ryan jumped early. And that's what they were watching.
Yep,
That is
it
what they were
was.
watching. And if you watch every single penalty, we'll get to it in a moment, all four, Matt Ryan jumped early. He read one right and didn't get there, but he went early on all four. So clearly their plan was get him jumping early and put it to the open side. And 3 out of 4, they were able to do it. So again, I think to Adam's point, he over-engineered the penalty
Mm.
shootout. And when you're clearly thinking about it for 60 minutes in the game, or at least that's the way it feels to me, you're going to overthink things. Sometimes keeping it simple is the best way. And I know Patrick Beach had that game in the A-League where he didn't make a save, but he was unbelievable in this game and in this tournament. Some of his reflex saves, even in this game, to get Australia to the shootout were absolutely unbelievable. And maybe he was having one of those games where he was about to make a big save in a shootout and really show that he can do that. So hindsight's 2020, but I think he over-engineered that shootout to Adam's point.
So just one point I just want to make about Patrick Beach, and look, Scott and I discussed this off air when we did yesterday. But again, I think if you've asked Patrick Beach himself that if he was that whether he is the same player, the same goalkeeper as he was 6 weeks ago when he played against Auckland to now, I think it'd be a big impact. He's a better player, and I think he would have learned a lot of lessons from that. And so to sort of take it out of his hands like that, I know maybe he's trying to protect him. I actually think he might have. I get the sense Patrick Beach. He's a good lad. He will come like another young gentleman that we'll talk about very, very shortly in regards to penalty shootout. I think that he will be fine, but I just think sometimes trying to protect these young guys may also be not helping them, but actually hurting them.
Yeah, it's a good point as well. I think something I personally probably didn't even consider. So, Adam, I really like that point. Just a couple of quick ones before we discuss the penalties a little bit further. I do wonder whether Tony Popovich's bold calls before the Turkey game really gave him I guess, the confidence to keep backing himself with the Tinkerman sort of series of lineups that we've seen since, and substitutions like this. That's just sort of a thought bubble I've had while listening to both your points, Scott and Adam there. So, and in terms of that sort of over engineering, I don't think we ever saw our best 11 on the field, probably for a prolonged amount of time either, which is really weird and quite concerning considering you're the coach. I know you've got to make calls and, obsessed over detail, but I think the fact that you don't put the strongest 11 on the field at any one time is absolutely mind-boggling. The other thing I just want to raise too, and I know it's not all, this is, probably maybe a little bit too far, but for someone that's so details orientated again, and the fact that I know that Matt Ryan obviously has experience, but he's the shortest of your 3 goalkeepers. For penalties, you want the tallest, most nimble goalkeeper that you've got, and that's probably Paul Izzo. He's got I'm not 100% sure on the heights there, so I've probably gone a bit early there, but I think Izzo at least has the nice blend of experience and a longer reach than Matt Ryan. So, I mean, that's really for me, going to your point, Adam, that he really should have went with Izzo. But I guess we should
Just to break in there, actually, my
yeah.
my first choice actually would he didn't do the change at all, go with
Mm.
Patrick Beach. But if he was thinking about the change, then that's right. They should go on Paul Izzo. But I want to preface that by saying, look, that's no shot at Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has
Mhm.
been an exceptional servant. I think this is probably it for Matt Ryan. He
Yep.
may get a couple of games to say goodbye, maybe during the Brazil series or something like that, depending on what happens. But yeah, again, it's probably not the way you want to see the end of Matt Ryan was to go down in flames like he did. I think that's yeah, that really does stick in my craw a little bit. But yeah, to say no, I don't want people to misinterpret. I'm not having a go at Matt Ryan himself. He was put in a bad spot. He has been an incredible servant to the Socceroos. Obviously, alongside captain. It's just the circumstances. It'll be remembered. Sort of dark day in Dallas.
It's not Dark Days in Dallas. It's the missed opportunity in Arlington. That's what this will
Mm.
forever be, Alex. I mean, in terms of this was the first time we've had a real 50-50 shot to get a win in the knockout rounds. And until the day arrives in 4, 8, 10, whatever amount of years it takes to get there, this will always be the missed opportunity where we had a real chance to go for it against a team who we were every bit as good as to try and beat. And this will always be that missed opportunity. I think that's why it's so heartbreaking for all of us and why we're so frustrated and annoyed and why there's been such discourse around the way we want to play going forward, which we'll get to later. But I think all of that comes from the fact this was a real missed opportunity. Everything's bigger in Texas now for Australia, including the disappointment.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to back Scott's point as well, is that in 2006 we lost to Italy, who ended up being world champions. In 2022 we lost to Argentina who ended up being world champions. Unless there is a massive shock coming in the next 15 days or so, I don't think Egypt are winning the World Cup. So, as with all due respect to Mo Salah and that team, they ain't winning the World Cup. So, to back up Scott's point, yeah, this is a missed opportunity because it was a winnable game. I'm not saying that we should have beat them, but it was a winnable game on ability and also by world rankings.
And it was also, I think the fact that Mo Salah was carrying an injury and he clearly, I mean, let's be honest, if you're a
He
Liverpool
was
fan,
always going to play, though, Alex. Let's be
he
honest.
was. Yeah, yeah, of course he was gonna play, but they were there for the taking. That like the fact that we sat back and the way that we played, as we sort of discussed there, um, why? Yeah, Egypt were there for the taking, and we should have went for it. But anyway, let's talk.
Just on that
Yeah.
point as well. So I don't mean to interject again. I want to pay sort of, a bit of respect as well to Egypt. I think we have focused a lot on the Socceroos, and
Mm,
that's fair enough. We are Socceroo supporters, but look to Mo Salah's credit, and look because of the club he plays for, I'm not his biggest fan, but what he did was actually, I thought was quite extraordinary. I thought that, the fact that he was allowed to be able to sit around in the pocket for 5 minutes, do nothing, and change the game. I actually thought, in the 70-minute mark, and the only possible justification I could give him taking Volpato, taking Uran Kundarov, is that basically fresh legs and would overrun Egypt. The problem was that when you have a player like Mo Salah, that you basically invited him into the game. The only thing bigger than fitness, overriding team fitness, is where momentum swings. And when he started playing, that absolutely stymied the Socceroos' momentum and pretty much handed the impetus to Egypt. I thought that's where world class players do that. And they stepped up despite the injury. And again, he nearly won it off the game of his boot and Rabia's head just before full time.
yeah, that's very true too. And again, you know that's where I think the selections and the style of football was wrong. But we could talk about that forever. But we should probably discuss the penalties. And whilst we're talking about penalties, Adam, I know that you sort of
Yeah.
had a bit of a list there that you want to discuss around the penalty takers.
I do, and it's sort of more related. Also, I was a bit sketchy about when we were talking about this. 'Cause I want to, because I think for you guys, I think this will be very, very obvious, very, very quickly where I'm going with this. But sort of towards Harry Sutar and Lucas Harrington, who missed their penalties. Here's a list of players. It's 12 players. Just want you to listen in this about these 12 players: Takumi Minamino, Haru Mitoma, Maya Yoshida, Pablo Sarabia, Carlos Soler, Sergio Busquets, Rodrigo, Marquinhos, Virgil van Dijk, Steven Berghurst, and probably most importantly, Kingsley Coman and Erlen Tchouameni. 12 players. Those 12 players are players that miss penalties during the knockouts in the 2022 World Cup. You look at that list, and you tell me that Lucas Harrington, especially, and Harry Souttar, they're not going to be okay, because even though they miss penalties, did their careers really suffer in the last 3.5 years? I don't think so. I think you've got nothing to fear. We don't have nothing to worry, especially Lucas Harrington, the support that he got, publicly from particularly Zlatan Ibrahimovic, which I think was a wonderful, wonderful sort of, statement he made. Again, I think it takes the most idiotic, no, I wouldn't even call him supporter, to even think about blaming Harry Souttar or Lucas Harrington for missing their penalties. I think that's, but again, to sort of really stand behind the point, those 12 players all missed penalties in knockout games in a losing effort 3.5 years ago in Qatar. There's some of the best players in the world right there in that list.
Yeah, and that probably explains to your point that we were discussing off air why Virgil van Dijk didn't take one for the Netherlands, because he missed previously, and he didn't want to miss again.
I thought that was, as a captain, I thought it was a gutless cowardice act not to step up and take. When you're wearing the armband, you should be taking that penalty. You should be in the top five, irrespective of whether he was haunted by it or not. Again, another player I'm not a huge fan of because of the shirt he wears, but still, he should have been there. So, but that does probably go a long way why he avoided it. Which you can't keep running from it.
No, you can't, and again, it's a good way to redeem yourself, isn't it? And to get rid of those ghosts from your memory. Really, I think that's the one way to do it, if you ask me. But I guess also, Scott, I know that you wanted to discuss who you would have liked to have seen take the penalties against Egypt.
Yeah, firstly, Adam's absolutely correct. There's no blame attached to the two guys who missed. They stepped up when they were asked, when they gave it their best shot. And unfortunately, look, everybody misses penalties. Mark Viduka missed in the shootout in 2005, for example, as the captain. So look, that can happen. And he was the number 9, by the way. So if people are focusing on the fact it's 2 defenders and Chokati was going to be 5th, look, defenders score penalties too. There's nothing about the position. But again, we talk about Tony Popovich over-engineering this shootout. He played 4 penalties, it seemed like. He took off Volpato, Irankunda, Metcalf, and O'Neill. I think we would all been pretty confident in those 4 guys stepping up, or some combination of those players. The other ones which I just don't understand, the experienced players who were on the field, there weren't that many. I know Jackson Irvine, he did step up and he did score. So did Alwa Mobile, but as is Baich, why did he not take a penalty? Again, I mentioned that Auckland Melbourne City shootout 6 weeks ago. He took one for Melbourne City on his left foot and he scored. Why not go and replicate it? Step up and say, hey, Lucas, you're a great young player. You've had a really good World Cup. You've got a great career ahead, but we're going to swap. I'll go in 4th and you can go wherever I was going to go. And then we're going to go with that. Just take the pressure off and say, I'm going to step up here as a senior player. I would have liked to have seen him in that top 5, taking him as well, because you want your senior experienced players to step up. It's not that young players can't have the composure to take a penalty, but when he stepped up, it was the first time watching him in the national team, I thought, oh, this moment might be a little bit too bright for him. It's a big ask for an 18-year-old kid to step up, isn't it? And he would look composed up there taking it, and his reaction post-game when he was interviewed was fantastic. What he said, you can see he's got a huge maturity as a young player, but I just wouldn't have sent him up there in that moment.
Yeah. And Thierry Henry in the Fox coverage actually did say that, I don't blame the young man, I blame the people who sent him up there.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about protecting Patrick Beach potentially from the penalty shootout. So why wasn't the same courtesy given to Lucas? And I know that Lucas said that all week at training he was hitting him perfectly and scoring, and that's obviously why he was trusted with that penalty. But I think again, I keep bringing it up. Popper's a stickler for details. It's an 18-year-old kid, mate, that you've sent up to the slaughter, basically. Well, slaughter's a bit harsh, but you've sent him up there.
You're asking a lot of him in that moment.
Yeah, for an 18, and I know that he's able to handle himself and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it's one of many decisions that have left us flabbergasted, I think, at times this World Cup. So
Well,
anyway,
the question as well, like you look at Egypt's side, because Egypt actually had a player on the pitch younger than Lucas Harrington in a
oh
young,
yes, the
young
striker.
Abdul Karim. Yeah,
Yep.
I I don't think he was in. Unless he was going to be fit.
He
I don't
wasn't in the
think we.
first four.
No. So that's what they were, and he's a striker,
Mm.
and yet they didn't think that he was going to be. I doubt he would have been in fifth, because that usually is reserved for a striker as well. So they were wanting to consider him in the first five. So again, not overexposing your youngsters. I just think again, we come back to this point. I think Tony Popovich just overthought this, and he
Yeah.
got it very, very wrong.
Yep. And the other side of the coin, if we won the penalty shootout, we'd all be praising
Yeah,
him, I guess,
absolutely.
or saying that we'd still be saying that they bold decisions, but they paid off ultimately. I think that's probably the context we should have put around this. And we should also mention that, I guess, this is, I think, the youngest Socceroos squad that's gone to a World Cup. So it's a bright future here. We've got to keep that in the back of our minds when we're discussing this. And the other thing too, for all the, I guess, discourse we've about Popovich and his style of play, look, it worked because he got us direct qualification to this World Cup for the first time since 2010. So we need to frame that around it, but I think we also need to look to the future and really ask, as Mark Milligan did in the post match analysis or wash up, if you like, what is Australia's footballing identity? What is it? Are we a counter-attacking team? Are we a park the bus kind of team, or are we going to go out and we're going to play some passes and go at teams? So that's the question that Football Australia really needs to answer. And I know they've got 1,001 other things that they need to talk about, but that's one thing I think for the future that really needs to be talked about and a decision made ASAP, really. Scott, I know you wanted to talk about something there.
Well, again, it's the same discussion we had this in 2010 after what happened there when what happened in 2010. The same happened in 2018 where we brought a foreign coach in and he did not allow them to express themselves, and we basically spent 3 games did absolutely nothing. And even 4 years ago, we all gave Graham Arnold a massive hand of applause that this is absolutely sensational. Sensational. You have taken a group of players who were scrapped their way through to get to the World Cup and then got them to the round of 16 by any means necessary. But now we need to evolve our football, and the same discussion is happening again now. So at some point, this actually has to happen. We've got to stop this underdog mentality, this happy to be there, glad we qualified, try and get out the group, play on the back foot. Everyone's better than us because we're not a football nation. We've got to get rid of all that. We've been to every World Cup since 2006. If you actually look at the number of countries who have done that, it's a very short list, which does not include the current hosts, the US or the Netherlands or Italy, who are a 4-time world champion. So it's a very select group who've qualified for every World Cup since 2006. So we need to stop this whole charade of we're underdogs, we play on the back foot, we try and make things happen and get lucky. No, we can do more than that. And the thing that's made me really, the only thing that's made me happy in the last 24 hours is that across the board, the entire football community have basically said, no, just getting there is not enough anymore. Just trying to get out of the group is not enough anymore. Not in this expanded World Cup. We need to demand better. And I'm very intrigued to see how Football Australia do react. I did see today they had some press conference in Dallas where they said they were happy with Tony Popovich, but they did acknowledge the fact that we need to identify the Australian way of playing, that work is underway. Well, it's time to expedite that work. Get that done.
Yeah.
So that once this next cycle begins after the Asian Cup, because it's clear they view the cycle beginning after the Asian Cup and not after the World Cup. We need that work needs to begin then. And whether it's Tony Popovich or somebody else, it starts then. So the only thing that's made me happy is that discussion is now in the forefront, and hopefully we can really force it through this time because it needs to happen.
There's the fault. It lies itself if that is actually the case. And the fact is that the cycle should not start after the Asian Cup. The Asian Cup should not be an afterthought. The Asian Cup, and if you look about the who are the true powers in Asia, and like, so I want to talk about that down in this episode soon. But you can tell that Japan, they will retool, they will rebuild with a view of starting now ahead of the Asia Cup, then into the qualifiers, into the World Cup. That's their grand final. And we've seen it too many times. We saw it in 2006, where it was an afterthought and it was an absolute disaster in a very, very winnable situation with a very, very, probably our best squad of all time, and they looked absolutely useless in 2007 at the Asian Cup. Like I said, this is a great opportunity, especially with the moment Japan. They'll be rebuilding. Korea, an absolute basket case at the moment. I don't know what the West Asia at the moment seems to be an absolute, fast at the moment. Why can't we go and win an Asian Cup? But if the attitude is, oh, we're going to rebuild after the Asian Cup, well, what a missed opportunity it is, missing out on being continental champions. Like you saw the joy we had in 2015. Surely that we can go out and try and win this Asian Cup in Saudi Arabia in next January.
I know that contracts don't really mean a lot these days, but Football Australia did give Tony Popovic until the end of the Asian Cup just before the World Cup. So there is that slight problem, and we know money's pretty tight at Football Australia. So I guess that's one little bit of an issue. But yeah, I mean, did he also did the qualification for the round of 32 give him that time too, perhaps in Football Australia's eyes? Yes. But for us as football fans, I think, I think the change probably needs to happen now with a lot of those countries. I don't think,
He's
just
got
to
to
your
show it
point,
in the Asian Cup, Alex. If he's got the job now, he's got to show that he can make that change. And he hasn't been that coach his entire career. He's always played that counter-attacking, not to lose style of play. He's got to adapt and evolve. Otherwise, unfortunately, he might not be the man that we need right now.
Yeah, I don't have faith in. I don't have faith that he's the right man going forward. From what we've seen at this World Cup, no. For me, he's completely overthought things, and I think the decision should be made now rather than waiting until the Asian Cup, as I think you said, Adam. Really, that's for me.
Well, it
where things
really
are.
does. It really does put a sharp focus all of a sudden on this series against Brazil in September, because I think now this is the mentality of Australian football at the moment. They're sort of lauding in a way and going, "Oh, how wonderful! We've got the 5-time world champions here and also as well in Queensland. Wonderful."
Yeah.
But what are the Socceroos going to do about it? Are we just going to roll over and let Vinny Jr. and Neymar and the rest of that merry mob come out here for a party and just because they're Brazil, that they're going to basically have a cakewalk? Or are Socceroos actually going to really take it to them and get serious about the preparation? There's probably going to be 2 other friendlies. Probably more than likely New Zealand, because they'll probably want to do the Soccer Ashes at some point in later this year. But I don't know. Maybe they need to rethink who those other 2 opponents are with a view to the Asian Cup. We've got literally 4 games in 2026, and then whatever warm-up games you can scrap together in the window just before the 7th of January. Again, you'll get a sense of the attitude of Football Australia, where they're headed with the Socceroos, head the Asian Cup, based on the mentality going into this Brazil series. I think all of a sudden it has become a very, 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 very telltale sign of what needs to happen going forward. And we're gonna get some answers very, very quickly about whether Football Australia and the coaching setup at the moment for the Socceroos actually taking the Asian Cup seriously. I don't mean words and that, but actions. And that's what we've got to see. And I hope that all Socceroos fans are really get onto their tails and say, you know what, this is a very, very important series for Football Australia and the Socceroos.
Well said, Adam. Very well said. And I guess while we're talking about the Asian Cup, I know this is another point you wanted to raise, Adam.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a World Cup overall discussion, but AFC, 2 teams made it out of 9 to the round of 32. Pretty disappointing, it's fair to say. And both Australia and Japan, the 2 teams that made it, knocked out at the round of 32 stage. Is it a genuine concern for the Confederation that's what's happened at this World Cup, considering the promise that was had 4 years prior.
Yeah. Scott, did you want to add to that before I go on another rant?
I'll go very quickly. I'll just say that, look, Japan, they showed that they have taken a step forward in their football. They just ran into Brazil. That's going to happen. That's why it was a missed opportunity for us, because we can play. Everyone looks at our young generations as to how great they could be in 4 years. Well, they could do exactly what Japan did and then run into Brazil and get demolished. So that can happen. Look, Korea, they're clearly going to have a massive rating. They've just completely crumbled in this World Cup. They had 2 sloppy mistakes and it cost them. And yeah, I think West Asia has a real problem as well. For the Asian Cup, from the Australian perspective, and I'll let Adam talk about the Confederation as a whole, if we're going to become the team we want to be in 4 years, these young guys, the Beaches, the Chakatis, the Harringtons, the Irankundas, etc., we need them to become the leaders of the team. And I would like to see them doing that at the Asian Cup. But yeah, Asia was, look, the first round of the World Cup in the group stage, unbeaten. After that, basically a complete disaster. And look, we're not going to lose spots in the World Cup, Alex, because this expanded World Cup was about one thing and one thing only. It was about trying to reverse engineer a path for China and India to get into the World Cup, because obviously they have big populations and that could mean huge growth for FIFA. So they're not going to take spots away from Asia because that's what they would like to see happen. So I'm not worried about us losing spots because of poor performance, but there's no doubt of the major confederations at this tournament, Asia's at the bottom of the list in terms of results. No doubt about it.
Yeah, very disappointing indeed. And Adam, I think it's time for your rant.
Yeah, look, I think it comes down clearly to the fact that Asia is simply unprepared as a confederation, and the fact is that we have no Asian Nations League. I think is a massive factor. And to quite frankly, if someone been Ibrahim Al Khalifa and Dato Windsor John and the rest of them at AFC House haven't told their advisors whatnot, you go and get this tournament up and running in a year's time, then they're part of the confederation, as far as I'm concerned, because it's all about rankings points. It's all about the way the draws work. The fact is that while the Asian teams, they play all across the world, playing chasing friendlies and whatnot, Europe, CONMEBOL, they have a 3-year qualifying period, so they play basically themselves with the occasional friendly. CONCACAF, they play a Nations League as well. So they're all building up ranking points, where I think that some nations are probably hyperinflated their actual ranking. Whereas as the Asian teams are probably a lot lower. I don't talk about Japan, Korea, Australia, Iran. I think we're probably where we're at. But even then, there's probably an opportunity where, say, Japan especially, probably should be in the top 20 if there was a Nations League. So that's something that has got to be a must. I know that there is a FIFA endorsed Asian Cup that's coming up. But again, it's not going to be that doesn't serve Australia any good, because that's going to be outside the window. But I also do think that Football Australia should be able to cobble together the best 26 A-League players. We should still do a job up there, because if we can't, then we've got bigger problems that we worry about. But I think the main priority for the Asian Football Confederation at the moment is to get that Champions League up and running. So that Nations League, I should say, up and running, and not try and keep everyone segregated, but have an open field. So you not only have the best teams, picking up wins, but also as well the next division, like a China, like an India, to actually improve their football, and even a couple of the minnows. I think that to give them the games in place so they can start producing. Because again, an anomaly like a Cabo Verde, for example, doesn't happen by accident. And even though that, yes, they're probably a bunch of Portuguese second division players. Again, that doesn't happen by accident, and that's because they play CONCACAF, they play AFCON every 2 years, so that team can build together. They can do it together. Unless you get knocked over in a qualifying, there's the joint Asian Cup, so qualifying whatnot. There is no set tournament where Asian teams are constantly playing against Asian teams, and that is a problem in itself.
Yeah, that's just some really good points. And, I'm not really a big fan of the Nations League sort of stuff, I must admit. But you're right. Asia's the only confederation that doesn't have it. And
it's a nice rankings booster, though, let's be honest. It really does inflate the European rankings higher than they
it
actually
does. It does,
And
yeah.
that does, and then when it comes to the draw time, it then causes all sorts of issues because now the pots are decided by rankings. Having teams that are hyperinflated versus teams that are probably undervalued in the rankings. This is how you get the matchups where they're in groups where they just get absolutely murdered. So again, if it's a fair playing field across the board, at least it gives them a fighting chance to be in better groups, and also as well removing teams out of where they probably shouldn't be as well.
That's also a very good point. That's also a very good point. Now, uh, let's dive back into the Socceroos World Cup and round it out, I guess, with our standout players of the campaign. I'll throw it to you, Scott. Who I guess was your man of the tournament, shall we call it?
Give you the pull for me. Let's go. Patrick Beach was unbelievable. Nobody even thought he was going to get a single second in this tournament. He has become one of the best goalkeepers in the tournament. He is right there for me. I thought Harry Sutar was immense as well. We should not. We don't everyone
Mm,
focuses on the younger players. That guy is a brick wall for us. He's
Mm.
absolutely unbelievable, and so was Aidan O'Neill in midfield. And I thought we
yeah.
missed him in extra time. They would be the Olympic podium for me in terms of the best three at the World Cup for Australia. Yes, the young guys were great. Toure, Iran Kunda, fantastic. Volpato, excellent. Metcalf, nice goal. But those three, I think, were absolutely crucial in the way that we played and what we achieved. Those three were the best three for me.
Yeah, hard to disagree there with you, Scott. And Aidan O'Neill. He just really surprised me this tournament. I don't remember him being that good on the ball and reading the game that well. It feels like he's just gone up another level since joining New York City, perhaps, or I've just got a bit of a blind spot on Aidan O'Neill. But Adam, who were your top three players of the World Cup campaign for the Socceroos?
For me, and it's a shame the way it ended for him, but Jordan Boss, I think, was absolutely sensational. He potentially could be one of the best fullbacks in the world based on that. And look, I'm not saying that as exaggeration because look, being a left fullback in the world game is a very, very rare commodity. And look, we just hope and pray that the injury is something that he can come back from very, very quickly. Because I think if he can get back to where he was at this World Cup, he's got a very, very bright future. Look, you can't ignore Patrick Beach. Like I said, it's just sensational. What a story for him. And look, I agree with Scott. I think Harry Sutar as well. And I can't believe he's only 27. Scott had told me I thought he was a lot older than that. So the fact that potentially we could have that back three of Sutar, Kachati, and Harrington for the next at least probably next two cycles at least, more with the latter two. I think that's a bright future for Australia because I think at the end of the day, the defence is always where it begins starts. And they're my top three, but also as well honourable mention Lucas Harrington, not only for even what happened, with the penalties and all that. For a kid that's 18 years old, he just looks so calm, so composed. He is just a freak of nature. And look, he probably is worth what everyone, all scouts and that are saying. Just the way he played in those two games or three games, in fact. But an honorable mention. But yeah, look for me, Geordie Boss is my MVP for Socceroos.
Yeah, Geordie Boss. I mean, he's talk of the town, and yeah, we just got to hope that injury's all right. For me, my top three, I'm going to make it up on the spot, but yeah, I think Patrick Beach has to be on that podium because for me, I didn't have him down for playing a single minute at this World Cup, if I'm completely honest, and the maturity of his performances were incredible. Aidan O'Neill has to be on there because he was uh, simply outstanding in that midfield. I'm going to go a left field one. Connor Metcalf, for a guy that didn't play very many minutes for St. Pauli this season through a combination of injuries, form, and just not having a particular role in that St. Pauli side that unfortunately got relegated from the Bundesliga. The faith that Tony Popovic put in him, he repaid probably tenfold, if not more, because you can't really put a value on what he did. But he was just so crucial to that Socceroos side when he played. And yeah, I really hope he gets a move somewhere where he's appreciated for what he can bring to a footballing side.
And actually, I just want to sort of wrap up the saying as well. We say that our top three, but that list goes beyond that. Like I think just in general, you look at everything else that goes on, just it's focusing so on the players. I think every single one of their 26-man squad should be proud of themselves. They have represented Australia. And look, I think the great thing is that, and I use it as a great, despite sort of the sort of I guess the negative tinge to it, is that the fact is that it's disappointment that the Socceroos go out in the round of 32. Look, I think that's only a healthy thing. I think some of the discourse may need to sort of settle down a bit. Look, I think that Tony Popovich probably, despite a couple of, you know, questionable decisions during the tournament, I think I don't agree with, him being sacked. I get the tenor that people like, Kevin Fitzboateng are saying, questioning whether he is the right man. But again, I think at least the Asia Cup and seeing out his contract, they should not even talk about extending that further until after the Asia Cup and let that result, let that lie before deciding the future for the next 3 to 4 years. But yeah, look, I think every player, I think they played their part, and they should be very, very proud of themselves.
Yeah, well said, Adam. Well said. I think you're probably right in terms of Tony Popovich. It's hard to see him going between now and the Asian Cup, and that's going to run its course. And then Football Australia will have a decision, and that might hinge as well on the performances of the Socceroos at that Asian Cup. Now, Scott, one last point I think we should probably cover. I know that you want to bring this up in terms of the playing squad. What did you think we lacked, and what do we need to find, I guess, going into this Asian Cup perhaps first and then into the next World Cup cycle?
I think it's more in the really big games. When the games get tight and the press is on and teams are putting the pressure on you, it's can you keep the ball in tight areas and create things in the front third? We're having quick, wide, pacey players that we can produce a lot of those. That's not enough. We don't have enough of the technical players in that number 10 or the wide area that can make things happen and break a game open. Yes, Volpato is one. And you look at the number of players we have overseas at the moment, there's a lot of them. We have a lot of really good young players going through. Obviously, Asian under 20 champions a couple of years ago. So there's a nice group there, but it's just that creative link. And if there's one thing we're not creating enough of, it's those types of players. I'm heartened by the fact in the last 4 years, the A-League clubs have started to trust Australian players in the front third, in number 9, in the wide areas. And you're seeing a whole glut of those players moving overseas, and any number of them. I sent you guys through a graphic. You can pick any of the 20 or so of those we've sent overseas and say they could be a part of the future. It's that creative link now. That's the one last piece. We need to start creating more of those players. And if we can do that, that I think is what we need to find in the next 4 years. It's another handful of players who we can trust to do that job, because really outside of Volpato and maybe Frustich, I can't think of anybody that we have who you can really assign that role to in terms of being the creative player to unlock a defense.
There's,
I
there's
do, I
pro-
do have, I do have one.
yeah, and I think
Uh,
you're about to
and
say who I'm
we
about to
we
say, Adam.
probably, yeah, that, and no, I just with the general sort of broader question to both of you is that what happens if Riley McGree is fit? I think Riley
That's the
McGree.
answer. Yeah, that's one answer.
Yeah,
That's one
that's one.
possibility.
But you're right. He's not the only one. You need more than just a Riley McGree or look even Alex Robertson to a certain point, but while untested. I put the question: how different would it have been if Riley McGree was fit? Do we even see Christian Volpato?
What if
So
Segic opts for Australia and not Croatia? Again, everyone says,
precisely.
"Oh, just we don't need him, forget him." Same argument for Volpato 4 years ago. Well, Volpato was proved the point. We did need him. And look, if Segic opts to come back to Australia, we need him. He's again that create. He can make things
Yep.
happen in that front third, and that's what we're lacking out. Yes, we've got great athletes in that front third now who can really hurt teams in behind in transition. But we need players to knit it together when we can't actually do that. When teams are playing a lower block, when there's not space in behind, like Turkey decided to leave for us in that first game. When teams don't do that, how do we break them down? And that's the piece we have to find. And as Adam said, Wiley McGree was clearly missing in this game yesterday. He might have been the piece to unlock things and make it happen for Australia. And yet we need more than just him. We need more than
Yeah.
Volpato. That's the piece we have to
Yeah.
find more of.
Yeah, so that's going to be very interesting to see who can step up and do that Is it going to be someone from the A League that makes a move overseas, or is it someone overseas that does a
Just on
job?
that, moving from the A-League thing, Alex, I mean, we have seen in the last 4 years, 48 players move from the A-League to clubs in Europe, Asia, or America and not come back. That's
Yeah,
a real positive sign. That's a
fantastic.
sign for the future that those players have gone to good levels overseas and stuck and not come back. And I know 7 have already left this year in the A-League as well. You talk about players like Clayton Taylor, who's just signed for
Mm,
Barnsley, Eli Adams to Japan, Sam Klein to Germany at St. Pauli. So that's a real positive. You see more and more of that, and that number continues to grow. And look, Pat Beach and Paul Ocon will probably be amongst the next couple to go as well. So it's great we're seeing that happen. We need more of it to happen. Keep flooding Europe at that level and hopefully more stick, because if they do, that's where you get the nucleus of a national team that can go on and do something. Let's be very careful, by the way. We're all excited by what this group can achieve in 4 years' time. Let's not call them the golden generation. That team in
yeah.
2006, a prime Kuhl, Viduka, Kalina, Grella, Bresciano, that's that's a really high bar to reach. Let's not say they're definitely
Mm,
going to achieve that. They could,
mhm.
but they might also just be a tier just below that as well. So let's not put too higher expectation on what they can be.
Actually,
Yeah,
I'm just going through this list as well, the midfielders as well, just looking at like some of these names on here. And I'll go commend you, Scott, again. This is a very, very good list to have. A couple
fantastic.
of names here that really stick out as left field options. Gianluca Ocon and Noah Skoko.
Wow.
Interesting.
They're all coming through the Suns.
Yeah.
It's a great way to make you feel old, isn't it?
I was going
Really
to say
great
that,
way.
yeah. I just felt like I aged another 10 years just reading those names. But again, that's the immense future that we have. And again, I'll just dovetail into my point about that is that I always felt as though 2026 was always going to be the start of something. And again, we got to the round of 32. It really excites me if everything goes to plan, Football Australia fund this properly and continue the forward momentum, what this team can do in 2030 or even 2034, even a 2032 Olympics, it seems very, very exciting. So, look, I
Forget
think
that.
for,
That group could go to the 2028 Olympics. How many of this squad that we just
yeah,
picked are
Yeah.
eligible for the next Olympic cycle? Aaron
exactly.
Kunda would be, for example. I mean, I
Mm.
think Patrick Beach would be, Chakati and Harrington. I mean,
Yep.
Geordie Boss probably isn't, but Ocon would be. I mean, we
Well,
could send
Geordie Boss,
half
you
our
take him as an overage player.
World Cup team, Alex,
Yep.
to the Olympics without even calling them overage players. That's the development we can really see here.
Yep, and then we've
Yeah.
got that under 20 side that won the Asian Championship
Yep.
last year, wasn't it?
2 years ago.
Just got
Yeah,
just got
Last year.
qualified.
Yeah,
That's the main thing. It's a
that's
lot.
the big
It's
yes.
it's a lot harder qualifying than the senior World Cup to make the Olympics. So look, but I have faith in this squad. I think that this squad has made a marvelous steps forward. And I just hope, like I said, for the I guess the final message maybe that we don't. Our audience probably are rusted on football fans, but tell your mates, tell those far and wide that maybe are casuals that discover the Socceroos. Don't jump off the bandwagon. The best is yet to come. And look, what we saw, the scenes around the country, that stick with the Socceroos because that is only going to get bigger and better with this squad if you get behind them. And also, and most importantly, it's something that the Football Supporters Association Australia, which you, Alex, are very, very heavily involved in. So I probably should have left this to you, but you can back me up on this. We really need to hold the politicians to account that if they're going to wear the scarves, wear the jerseys, we'll actually start funding the game and allow the game to get to its potential because, like I said, seems like we've seen over the last couple of weeks, they can only be bigger and better than 8 years' time when this team could potentially go further.
Yeah, well said, Adam. And definitely, if you're listening to this, make sure you check out the FSAA. I'm no longer part of it, but yes, I was. Earlier. I was a committee member and secretary, but I've stepped down recently. But they are doing some
So hear that.
fantastic work. No, that's all good, Adam. They're doing some fantastic work, and they do have a campaign to get in touch with your local member of parliament, I believe. So definitely check them out. Sign up and knock on the politician's door, as you said, Adam, and try and get some more funding for our wonderful game because there's some really exciting times ahead. We've got the Women's World Cup next year. We've got, under 17s World Cups that we've qualified for later on this year for both the boys and girls. We've got an Olympics coming up the year after. Hopefully the men and women both make that. And then, World Cup qualification campaign and Brazil series to look forward to. It's exciting times.
So, and also as well, just that point, for those that may doubt what pouring money into the game looks like, watch Morocco. See where Morocco come from.
Yeah,
you
well
want to
said.
see an example of when government, in that case, the king, gets behind football in that country. Look what they're doing right now. You look and see how they're live, and they're probably out of the old world order that looks like to be dominated. They look like the ones that could potentially wreck that order. They're ranked seventh in the world, and that doesn't come from just plain luck. So you want to see what money does to national programs. Just watch Morocco in the next week or so. I think because I think they've got a great chance of going very, very deep into this tournament.
And I must add too, they've also invested in the women's game as well. We shouldn't overgloss that. They've invested in that women's team, and I think I can't recall if they made the 2023 World Cup, but they were at some sort of international tournament recently as well. But yeah, Morocco, great example, and let's hope that Australia can, follow some sort of example like that, or the Japan 100-year plan, or something in between those that would work more suitably for Australia. But I think we should end it there on that positive note. And one more time, Adam, I'll get you to plug your wonderful podcast that you do with Scott and Kurt, the Brisbane Football Review.
Yeah, so you can find us on Facebook, The Raw Review, or Brisbane Football Review. You can find us on Twix at BNE Football, Instagram, and Threads. You can find us Brisbane Football Review, or lowercase. Drop us an email, brisbanefootballreview@gmail.com. You can find us on podcasting platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And this show will be on our feeds a bit later on, but also as well our wrap up of the NPL FQPL competitions on our Queensland Football Show, and coming very, very soon, Australia Cup preview show and A-Leagues as well later in the year with my good friend down there. There's not all vision down there, Scott, and Kurt as well. So so check out again. Really, really appreciate. We seem to actually had a bit of an influx of new viewers and followers. So I have to thank you for that, Alex. I think it's your audience are supporting. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Hopefully it is. And hopefully, that will also flood over to my way as well. That would be nice. But yes, all good. Thank you very much for your time this evening, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. Just because the Socceroos are out doesn't mean we will not. No, that was very bad. Doesn't mean we won't stop covering the World Cup. We'll bring you some updates along the way as schedules permit, but looking to round out the tournament, and it might be a little bit less stressful now that the Socceroos are out and we can actually enjoy the football, let's call it.
Is anyone changing their prediction? Because we all said Spain before the tournament. I'm officially changing
I said
mine
Brazil.
to France. You said Brazil. I'm changing mine to France. I think France are going to go on from here.
I actually had money on money on Argentina. So, but there's a part of me there that, but I think France. So, although after today's game, I'm not too sure. So, but it's a very, very even competition right now.
It is, yeah. So enjoy that, and we'll bring you some predictions and updates and discuss all the controversies that no doubt await us on the road to the final in a couple of weeks' time. But thanks again for your time, Adam and Scott. Really appreciated that, and
Pleasure.
We will talk soon. That's it for the Aussie Football Passport for this week, joined by Brisbane Football Review. Enjoy the World Cup, and we will be back soon to discuss that. Thanks for listening.